everyone, and welcome to another episode of the CoachCon podcast. So we are now at episode 10, and a bit different today, on my own. I haven't really rehearsed anything. I haven't really got a script. We're just going to go for it and say what rubbish comes out. But yeah, one thing I will just say, and you'll probably hear me say one thing I'll say a lot, because I think I do say it quite a lot. But anyway, point is, I wanted to do this podcast for an awful long time, and it's something that took a little bit of confidence to get going with. My first idea of doing this was over a year ago, and it kind of never happened, and it was simply just down to a confidence issue, and that's something I think I'll touch on a little bit more in this episode, just confidence in general, kind of my experiences with it and things like that, which is hopefully going to help you. So like I say, episode 10, I would just like to say thank you for everyone who has been listening. I know we are a rather small operation, but the feedback has been very, very good from folks that's listened to it. Some of my clients have listened to it, friends, and then just, people along the way, which has been really, really good. And some of the clips that I've been able to share across Instagram, particularly the clips with Keefe, Dudley, Adam, they've really took off and got some great engagement, which has been fantastic. So I kind of just want to use this episode to reflect a little bit, kind of on the first 9 episodes, share a little bit of where I'm at personally. Also going to dive into a couple of personal bits as well, open up a little bit more. I'm going to discuss where I think people get stuck the most as well. And as I say, I have had some brilliant people on already. So coaches, physios, bodybuilders, Brad Hopper, who's an actor, so a wide range of folks. And coming up, I've got Aaron Hill coming on, who was in the forces. So his talk that he can hopefully give to us is going to be around sort of resilience, confidence, mindset. It's going to be very, very good. Luke Watson coming on, who some of you may have heard of, is a guy who is behind the camera for coaches. He is a coach himself as well, but that is going to be fantastic to hear about, some of the things that lead into things like photo shoots, working with different coaches, and that's going to be really valuable, not only from a business standpoint, but also, just a general kind of confidence, well-being kind of background. Looking to get Dan McNabb on and Anth Bales as well, so obviously 2 bodybuilders with vast experience who, will be able to give us some great insight around training, nutrition, mindset, lifestyle, all those kinds of things. So really, really excited, and this is kind of why I'm keeping on with this as well, because the conversations have been fantastic, the people we've had on, and then the things we've got to look forward to as well is very, very good, and I'm in a very privileged position to be able to have these folks on. So one thing as well is, no one's got it perfectly figured out, but everyone is moving forward. It's not necessarily the thing of having, maybe the perfect plan or the perfect setup for anything that you want to do. We think back to the first episode where we had Kieran on. So he has grown a business in a bit of a niche, to say the least, being a fitness virtual assistant. And he talked to us about burnout, how things have affected him, in terms of growing that, how he had to do night shift to then be able to kind of fund and support himself to be able to set this business up. And he did that for about 6 months until he's been able to finally go all in on this one business. And sometimes, the word sacrifice gets thrown around a lot, and that is very much the thing of like, you do need a little bit of that. So if you're wanting to get into good shape, then it is going to be the thing of not necessarily, getting up at 4 a.m, but you might be having to get up at 5:30, 6. You might have cold mornings, rainy mornings, and it's the thing of getting up and getting it done. So that would be a sacrifice. Sometimes it's a thing of building a business as well. So I know when I've, want to branch out and do my, online and everything like that, there's a lot of time that gets chucked in. There's a lot of, if we think about ourselves as a, bandwidth, if you have so much on that is maybe, family, work, general stress, maybe kids are in the frame, all that kind of thing. We think about that. And, then starting a business or a new venture or, getting into the gym, things like that is going to take up a little bit more of that bandwidth. And it's natural to feel a little bit burnt out. And I always think when I get to that point of having a little bit of burnout, I try and see the positive in that. And that is the thing of, I know that I'm pushing at that point. If I'm feeling that thing of where I'm not really feeling much at all. If I'm just kind of a little bit, going through the motions, then I know I'm not pushing. I know I'm not going to be getting to that next level. And something that leads into this as well is we talk about resiliency. That is the thing of whether we're in the gym or we're looking to get into better shape. Adam, who came on the podcast on episode 2, I believe, he discussed sort of what he calls the resiliency triangle, which is strong movement, strong mindset, and strong recovery. And strong movement is, for example, if, again, using the example of if you're wanting to get into better shape, which is probably a fair bit of what this podcast talks about, it's going to be the thing of, are we setting our day up for success? Are we setting up where we're going to be getting in the gym first thing? As our mindset aligned with our goals in the sense of we're doing the right things to get there? Yeah, we're still having a life, and then is the recovery in place as well? Because the thing I always try and plan in first of all during the day is fun, family, and fitness. So on a Sunday night, when I set my following week up and I look at what's coming up in terms of, say, for example, sessions with clients or, doing client check-ins, work, I make sure that does obviously come into it, but it's making sure I get fun, family, and fitness in there first. So those 3 things mean that I've got things to look forward to. It means I'm looking after myself. It means that I'm recovering. So another lesson as well from the podcast so far, when we had Tom Murphy on, remind us that confidence isn't all natural. It's evidence of our actions, and it is very difficult for folks to put themselves out there. I mean, for example, in my own experience, I wanted to do this podcast for a long time. I always fancied doing it. I can talk for England, so I thought this was going to be a good move for me. It's been in my mind probably over a year. Was probably getting on for 2 years by the time I actually did it. I mean, yes, I did have other things going on. Yes, I was maybe doing other things, but I did, kind of think, well, do we need another podcast? Do I need to do it? Are people going to listen? All these doubts go on, and it does affect you. It does affect your confidence. It does affect sometimes as well how you see yourself, but it's evidence of your actions. And I've learned that getting up to episode 10 now, feedback's been very, very good. I'm sure some people are probably negative, but it hasn't reached me yet, which is good. But it's very much a thing of continuing to put myself out there in different ways. And I've got, a couple of different things that are kind of on my mind. I'm wanting to get back out there and do some music again. I've still got some music to release. And that is again going to be the thing of I put myself out there, trying different things and trying to move forward. And I think that is something that we all should be looking to do. Putting yourself out there. The thing is, people forget many things every day, and you put yourself out there, making a video, starting a podcast, whatever it is, people are just going to forget about those things, and the world moves on. It's one thing, I'll probably get this quote wrong, and I can't be asked to edit it out if I do, but there's a guy that I was lucky enough to meet a couple of times, Daniel Dargan, and he shared a reel along quite a while back, and he said, when was the last time he thought about the Queen when she passed away? And you kind of think, yeah, I haven't thought. It's weeks since you've thought about that. Life moves on. She's probably the most famous person on the planet. She's passed away, and then you're like, oh, I haven't thought about that in how long. That's the thing. Life moves forward, and the world moves forward, and you put yourself out there. Something that you think might be super big in that moment is not going to be potentially remembered for a long time after. Hopefully that makes sense. I probably made a right mess of that, but never mind. Anyway, Aoife Quinn we had on. Fantastic coach. First female on the podcast. Hopefully all being well. But she was very, very good in discussing how fat loss and confidence link, but you need to stop obsessing over the scales and talk about the scales for a moment. That is something that I very much obsessed over myself. There was a time where it was the thing of, weighing in daily, which is okay to get that average, but then it was the thing if I might go on a little bit later, I might go to the bathroom and go back on, and just to see if that weight's dropping and moving in the right direction. And there are a lot more things important than just going on the scale. before doing this episode this morning, I've done a client check-in, and I'll be honest, he said he's put 0.2 kilo on this week on average, and I'm like, well, he's already super lean anyway, so a change is going to be noticeable. So it could be the thing of, is it a bit of muscle that's gone on? Is it the thing of where life has impacted him this week? Has stress been involved? You know, that kind of thing. Have we had meals off plan? That was actually what had happened. Is it the thing of, you know, there have been some things that haven't been getting tracked correctly? You know, I think tracking and that kind of thing is super important, but to get away from tracking, track initially, learn what's in certain foods where you can look at something and go, yeah, I know what's in that. And then is it the thing of where you just have the same set meals most of the time and then a little bit of variation on a weekend, but you know what's in each meal, you know what your food contains, and that's kind of the way I do it. And the meals that I use, so my Greek yogurt, my, you know, low fat version of bolognese, like that is the thing where I'm like, you know, I know what's in those meals, so if I have them, it's there. So routine is again something Aoife touched on. It's something that a few of us have touched on during the podcast, and it's important to get it right. You know, everything I kind of do, I log in the calendar. So today, I'm going down to York for the day, having a nice time down there, mail out, that kind of thing. That's in the calendar, but also doing the non-negotiable of making sure I get a podcast out every Monday at 10 a.m. is also in the calendar. So it'll be very easy to sack things off, to move things around, but the fact that things are in the calendar is keeping me accountable. It's making sure that I'm getting things done, lean by example, and trying my best to move forward and you know, better myself every day. And everyone can be doing that. I'm not saying that you need to be, you know, having the thing of where it's something like a podcast, something like that, but just the little things in place. So getting yourself a routine around, say, the gym, around doing your meal prep, around having even things like your family time, you know, planning in that fun family fitness first and then letting everything else fall into place. Something that links with routine in that same theme is consistency. And I know Dudley, who we had on last week, which was absolutely fantastic, he shared an awful lot around consistency. And that is the same, you know, that the same with, you know, starting a business or branching out, which obviously, you know, I've been able to do, and a lot of you have as well. Or it's a thing of getting in shape. It comes down to the consistency, you know. And the thing is with the consistency front, it could be the thing of where maybe there's one day that I end up missing with this podcast. However, you know, 51 weeks out of 52, there'll be a podcast. So that is pretty consistent. It's not about being perfect. That's something that, you know, and I don't want to go down the whole cliche route, you know, the better than yesterday, which everyone likes to say. But it is very much the thing of, you know, if you get 99 times out of 100, it's better than nothing. And that is very much the same for the gym. You know, I work with clients that are single parents. I work with clients that have businesses. I work with clients that are in high stress jobs, you know, in banks, in recruitment, things like that, management, where there's a lot of pressure to perform well, that kind of thing. And as long as the guys are putting in the work 6 days out of 7, they're still getting results, they're still moving forward. To be at the very, very elite level, it does have to be 7 out of 7. You know, you're not going to win a bodybuilding show being 6 out of 7 or 5 out of 7. But to get into really, really good condition to even do, you know, I mean, everyone's idea of this is different, but to even step in front of a camera and do a photo shoot and look good, you can get away with doing, you know, 5, 6 out of 7. And as I say, when I say the, you know, the 1 or 2, you know, out of 7 is maybe a little bit off. It's not the thing of where we've ordered Domino's, we've eaten 4,000, 5,000 calories. It's not that kind of thing. But, you know, a little bit of off-plan food here and there isn't going to be a big deal. And you've got to think from where some folks have came from. So some folks have came to me where they've had a takeaway every day. If we cut them back to having a takeaway 5 days a week instead of 7, yeah, it's still not brilliant. I understand that, but that is way better than having it every day. That little change is going to gradually get people moving forward, because we don't want the thing of where someone wants to start something and they just go 100% straight away. They cut out all the junk food, they cut out all any processed, whatever it is, food that they're trying to get rid of, and just go right in at the deep end, because that's not going to last. For some folks, it might. I believe the old David Goggins thing, when he wanted to get into the sales, he lost an enormous amount of weight very quickly, and it was a thing of like that stuck for him, and he got through that, and then he kind of started eating a bit more normal when he was in the forces and that kind of thing, and that did work. But that wouldn't work for me. If I was to just start the day and go down to whatever he was doing, 600, 800 calories, something like that, it's not. Sometimes we might just need that small change. We might just need the little bits at first, but as long as we're being consistent, say 5, 6 out of 7, which is going to be way more than how we were at the beginning. So on my own journey, for me personally, a lot of you may know this, some of you may not, I wasn't always a coach. I did several jobs that I didn't really care for. It's not that I hated them, but a lot of it was just going through the motions. So for those that don't know, I've done pretty much every job. I've done call centres, I've done restaurant/bar work. I was a housing management assistant for a time, which had everything from going around different properties, changing light bulbs, to reporting faults, to putting curtains up, to working at accommodation receptions, handing out parcels and light bulbs for the for the tenants to change, that kind of thing. There was and I've also been a Father Christmas. I was Santa, believe it or not. And as I say, that's not going to be a career move. That's none of those things are something that I wanted to do long term. Particularly, I think the call centre stuff. I worked at Empower for a time, and it was good crack, great people. But sometimes when you've got a billing query come through and you don't know how to answer it, and someone shouting at you for putting their bill up, you don't really want to be doing that 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. So that was kind of my story before getting the coaching side of things. And what I did, I was working for a different company by this point after the redundancy at Empower with the COVID. And with that, it was just one day I'd been getting back into the gym, so I'd gotten pretty out of shape. I was about 18 stone, something like that, and I'd started working with a guy, and he was encouraging me to do my PT qualifications. He was saying, I think you'd be good at this. I think, this is something you could do. And I was like, no, absolutely not. Like, couldn't do this. And here we are, sort of 4 and a bit years later, doing it, online coaching as well. Things have done pretty well, but Tony kind of gave me my start with that, and he gave me the confidence and the encouragement to do it. And at the assessment days, he came along with me. He was, anyone who's done a PT qualification, you kind of have to have like someone with you to coach and teach them how to go on. And I was very fortunate to be able to have him there for that, and to give me a bit hand. It's very much a thing of having that belief in yourself to make a change. So I walked out of that previous company, and I knew I wanted to do this. I knew I wanted to do sort of PT coaching because Tony had given me that belief. But I quit that day before I'd even signed up to PT Academy to do my qualifications, and that's kind of the thing of, it's not always, it was having a little bit of a plan, but I also didn't start straight away. It wasn't, I had to get signed up and then gradually work through, and then you obviously get feedback off tutors and this kind of thing. You need to book in your assessment days. But within 3 months, I was qualified. I delivered my first official session. It was the 6th of December, so I was qualified by Christmas in a completely new path, and I had also been doing a little bit of free work as I was getting qualified in the August. So it was very, very quick in terms of getting qualified. It was kind of that, I think it was about three and a bit months from, say, that August until, starting early December. That is the thing. With my own journey as well, I'm very honest in the sense of, I've been the lad who's lost a lot of weight, felt very good, I've slipped back, and had to pull myself up again. And with all this, the journey, I know what it's like to feel stuck, not just physically, but in life. When I was, as much as I liked it at times, the people in the crack, I do remember sort of spinning on my chair in Empower thinking, is this kind of it? Is this going to be me? Call centres and that kind. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I always want a little bit more. And I still had gotten a job after that when Empower came to an end, which was way worse, and I wanted to be back at Empower straight away. But obviously couldn't with the redundancy. But with that, it was just the thing of I didn't want to be stuck there, and I didn't want to be stuck spinning on my chairs in offices chasing sales targets either. That wasn't for me. And a lot of what I do now is to help other people because I know what it's like to be stuck in those areas, and we've been able to get some pretty good wins along the way. As I'm sure folks have seen on Instagram, there's pretty much texts and wins and shares coming in pretty much every day to be able to kind of back up what I'm doing, what I say, and also the success of my clients, which is very, very good. So something that I've not talked about on the podcast yet, I think I've mentioned it a little bit on my Instagram stories for those that follow me regularly. I've mentioned it now and again, but something that I do want to share that I think is pretty relevant and hopefully going to resonate a little bit is earlier this year, about February time, I did start finally going to therapy, which was 29 years overdue. Oh, but seriously, for me, starting that, it wasn't about stress and mindset. And the reason I started it, it wasn't to be going in there every week, crying and getting upset. Because I've seen some people that have gone to therapy before, and I know it's different for everyone, but I didn't want it to be, a sob story. I didn't want it to be, woe is me and, the whole drama of, I've got my therapy today. I didn't want any of that crap. I wanted it to help me to level up, to deal with the shit in the past, to be able to come forward and come through it stronger. It was about going deeper and not just sort of, it's trying to find out those patterns and those connections and what kind of makes me in a sense. And I want to understand a little bit more about that. I want to start working through some childhood trauma that I had to deal with. So we'll not go into all that today, but it's, the thing of being picked on in school, how that affects you. For me, it was a fair bit during primary school, then kind of went into secondary school till about year 9, 10, that kind of thing, and then I lost a bit of weight over the summer. Things like that, and I was able to come back from that. But it's understanding it, it's doing the EMDR, which is very much worth looking into if you are someone that is needing to recover and heal from any sort of trauma. So for me as well, there was a lot to kind of uncover on the relationship front as well. Being in a couple of narcissistically abusive relationships, which, fun times. But being able to get through that. And the thing that I will say is we can all have a laugh about it, like I am now saying fun times. We can all put a brave face on, but these things do leave scars. These things, as much as we can shrug them off, that kind of thing, you can end up carrying this shit around forever. And I wasn't prepared to do that. Yeah, I did obviously have to get to the point where, you budget for these things and you maybe make a sacrifice in one area to be able to fund that. I appreciate, some folks I've talked to, therapy's expensive, this, that. Yeah, it does rack up, I'll be honest. But it has been tough at times, there's been no tears yet, we've been close. It has been tough, but it's given me a lot of perspective. It's helped me to break patterns. It's helped me back. It's helped me see my own accountability in situations, what I could have done better. And I do believe that journey has made me sharper as a coach, as a person. I believe I see things clearer and handle life better. And if something goes wrong, doesn't quite go right, then I look at that a bit differently, So rather than getting angry or blame myself sometimes, or saying it as, oh, it's a me thing, it's because I'm not good enough, it's because I'm the problem, it doesn't allow me to get trapped or stuck in the past anymore. And speaking of stuck, where a lot of people get stuck, if I'm honest, I think most people fail because they don't know what to do, or sometimes maybe they even do know what to do, but they just don't have that accountability. They don't have the consistency. They fail because they don't do the basics consistently. A lot of the basics are things like you sleep, first of all. So is it the thing of where you are, and I've said this before, you make yourself stay up late because you want to see the next episode of this, next episode of that. You may be having energy drinks later in the day to try and power through the night, things like that, to be able to watch TV. Whereas actually, you should just be switching off and going to sleep and getting that rest that you need, ready to be fresh and start the next day. Because if we know that if we don't get a good night's sleep, we know that the next day that is going to drag on. That's going to affect the next day. That can lead to the point where folks can skip training, they're not going to be as sharp at work, that kind of thing. And another one is the food. So I'm not saying that you need to be super strict, veg all the time and all this clean food, but the main thing that I say, and I've done it myself, it's the thing of you over restrict and then you end up binging. So thinking that a meal out is going to completely ruin your progress, and then potentially being super strict and then repeating it, whereas actually it's more having that meal out, that off-plan meal, whatever it might be, and then it's how you handle it the days coming up to that and the days after. So is it the thing of where you're going to go out and then just cut back a little bit over the next few days to make up for it, rather than letting that spiral, or being the thing of where you continue to be off plan, which is in time going to undo your progress. Mornings, so going back to sleep as well, on the theme of sleep, sorry, it's the thing of, are we hitting snooze on a morning? Are we having that extra hour in bed rather than actually getting up, being reactive and starting the day reactive instead of proactive? Sorry, I meant to say. So your first hour of the day is something that's going to set you up for the rest of the day. So for me, dreadful first thing on the morning, always tired, takes a while to get going. I try and delay sort of my first caffeine serving of the day, and at the minute I'm just having one sort of small sugar-free energy drink on the morning, but I'm trying to delay that just to let sort of what you call the adenosine receptors clear out. That was something that I learned, where you shouldn't have caffeine straight away, just to let your body try and naturally wake up rather than forcing it, in a sense, as that can potentially leave you a bit tired later in the day. So it's very much a thing of getting up first thing. I mean, there was before I went fully online with things earlier this year and pushed that a little bit more, there was a chap I was working with, Cameron, and we were in the gym 5 o'clock every morning, and this was in November. So we were getting up first thing, doing that, getting them in, training, and that's 5 o'clock in the morning. So that is like the thing that sometimes has to happen. We have to get up, we have to react, and for him potentially working 12-hour days, that kind of thing, that was the only time feasibly that we could get in there and train. Something that is worth mentioning, I believe, is distractions. So relationships can drain you. I've been there, and that's, we'll not go too far into that today, but getting your energy drained by someone else is very, very difficult. Your environment, so the people you surround yourself with, so potentially it's mates that don't get your goals, maybe it's people encouraging you to go out and drink, that kind of thing, where that doesn't necessarily align with what you're trying to do. Environments is a thing as well, so I've made sure that the main people that I hang around with, so to speak, it's folks that's doing well, it's folks that are pushing for more, whether and that doesn't have to be sort of necessarily gym or that kind of thing. It can be very much a thing of, maybe they doing well in work, maybe they're doing better, financially, that kind of thing. So that helps you moving forward. I believe that who you surround yourself with matters massively. Something that I do get asked now and again on Instagram is kind of where I'm at in terms of my own training. So around this time last year, I ran an ultramarathon, so I did a 50k, and that was a huge challenge, particularly because I didn't really train for it. I just kind of did, a couple of half marathons in the run up, and that was kind of it. At the moment, I'm not particularly prepping for anything else. There might be a couple of things I do before the end of the year, but I'm still trying to train, still trying to push forward. I've had a couple of little injuries as well, which I've talked about on the Instagram story. So I've had numerous sort of hip groin pulls for some reason, which has been a little bit difficult. I also had a perianal abscess, which not pleasant. Don't recommend that to anyone. But honestly, though, motivation has been a little bit up and down, and something that I do tell my clients and talk about on the Instagram story, things like that. Motivation is flaky. Momentum's what counts. If we can get a day and then string another day on top of it, and then another and another, then that is going to be what counts. And this podcast has even kind of reminded me of that. That it's about doing it every Monday. Sometimes it's getting a few episodes banked and then uploading them from there and scheduling them, and it's been consistent. And full transparency, this is getting recorded 20 to 8 on the 22nd, Monday the 22nd, and it's going out at 10 o'clock. I very much left it last minute. I wasn't able to secure a guest this week. Everyone's kind of free next week, so there's going to be a few getting banked, ready to then put on a little bit further down the line. So on the coaching side, clients, I've been very happy in terms of progress lately. It's not just physical changes, but it's the mental side of things as well, and when they are seeing progress for themselves as well. So yeah, we get the check-in photos, yeah, we see average scale weight, things like that, but it's when they see that as well, and it's learning sometimes a little bit more about nutrition. It's learning that having a meal out isn't going to completely cripple you. It's learning the thing of you can have a life and still get into good shape, and those are things that I teach, very much with inside my coaching program with the online stuff. And it's something where, yeah, I still want you to have a life, but you are going to work hard. You are going to get in good shape. So some takeaways after 10 episodes. Everyone battles self-doubt, but your high performers just act anyway. And that is a lesson that's been shared by a few of the guests. I'm sure some of you will remember. And it's very much a thing of pushing on anyway, even when we don't want to. And self-doubt can absolutely cripple you. It can keep you stuck. This podcast really should have been getting started over a year ago, but it was the self-doubt that crept in for me then, whereas now I handle it an awful lot better. Burnout is real, and having rest in places, planning out your recovery and having systems in place to help you, that is what stops it. So, for example, the word system I'm not a particular fan of, but it's a thing of having a good schedule in place, having a calendar app in place where you plan everything in. That could be classed as a system, and that is something that is very much worth doing. Confidence is earned through action. I think I can just leave that point there. We take action, we put ourselves out there. That is what's going to earn our stripes essentially going forward. Fitness isn't just macros or muscle building. It's mindset, it's things like identity, it's things like environment. So where your mindset is, how you go about getting your result. Identity is in terms of where you want to be, what you stand for. Are you someone that's going to be hitting snooze on a morning? Are you someone that's just going to be full of self-pity? Or are you going to be someone that's going to get stuck in, set yourself challenges and actually do them? Don't be someone that says, oh, I'm going to do this event, and you don't even bother training for it and you just end up cancelling it, because stuff like that just absolutely eats away at you. And your environment, be careful who you surround yourself with. Don't be around people that are negative, doom and gloom, people that's going to pull you down, people that's not going to necessarily support you, people that's going to try and put a bit of a dampener on things that you're trying to achieve, because that is not who you want to be around. And from my own journey, therapy, consistency and being honest with yourself matter way more than quick fixes and crash diets. So yeah, that is episode 10, 35 minutes, not bad, didn't rabbit on too much. a bit more reflective, a bit more honest, but hopefully it's been useful. I do have some very good guests lined up next, so very excited to share that with you. But if there's anyone that you'd like to hear from, anyone that you think could potentially try and get on, then do just drop me a DM on Instagram. And if you enjoyed these first 10, do me a favour, do it, subscribe, share it with a mate. Let's keep this growing. Appreciate you. Thank you very much. And I will see you in episode 11 with Aaron.